This is the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to Jesus. And the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So Jesus told them this parable. Which one of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? When he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost." Just so I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who have no need of repentance. Or what woman, having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? When she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, "Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost." Just so I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
So look, I wasn't lost. I knew right where I was the whole time. But apparently, our parents didn't know. So to them, we were lost. You see, when I was growing up in Nebraska, I lived on a dirt road across from a big farm field. It was usually a hay field, those hay bale stacks, the stuff of dreams for boys. And beyond the field, over the fence row, another field, and another. During our elementary school years, as we got older, my friends and me got more comfortable exploring beyond our yards. And so it was that one day my friend Jeremy and I crossed the fence row and set off on a longer than expected adventure. Across the field, through rows of corn stalks, past an old grain silo. Eventually we came to a muddy little pond. We hadn't brought anything to drink, but the water looked gross to me. Jeremy took a sip. I knew he regretted it later that night when his mom called mine to say he was having awful stomach cramps. I don't know how long we were gone. 2 hours? 5? But long enough for folks to worry. We hadn't told anyone where we were going or that we were going at all. And so our parents fretted, and they sent out a search party. As we sat there by the muddy pond, a four-wheeler suddenly pulled up. An older boy who lived down the road was riding it. When he saw us, he said, "Everyone is looking for you." So we got to our feet and made the journey home, retracing our steps, but moving with more purpose this time. I was filled with a sense of dread. Everybody was looking. What were our parents going to say? What were they going to do? I wanted to get home, but I also didn't want to face their anger. As we made our way through that last little bit of hay stubble toward our road, I could see the adults had gathered, not just ours, but others too. In a rural area, such things create a stir, I guess. There was my dad, hands on hips, staring out at us. There was my mom shouting out, "Where have you two been?" Other parents whispering to each other as they began to slink away. Thanks to us, it was all a mix of commotion and emotion. Jeremy's parents snatched him up. He was destined for another grounding. I could tell my dad was getting his thoughts together to give me a lecture. And my mom, a little teary, could only eke out, "I'm just relieved." If they felt joy about my being back safe, it was clearly muted by the frustration and the disgust I saw in their eyes. Oh, they were glad I was home, but everything about the homecoming said, "Don't do that again." In real life, when someone does something dumb, goes and gets lost, but then is found, that's often what it's like. I'm a parent now. I know how this goes. There's relief, for sure. A bit of thankfulness, some emotional release. But you also can't escape a burning sense of anger and a need to put some fear in those little hearts. There's all those emotions, all of them, but not really rejoicing. Rejoicing, that would be too much, wouldn't it? That would excuse the dumb thing too much and not teach the lesson to never do that thing again. That's what it's like when someone is lost and then is found. Except, what if it's not like that with God? What if that's what these parables Jesus tells in Luke 15 are about? They're about lost things, yes, a lost sheep, a lost coin, a lost son, prodigal son, if we kept reading. These lost things get found thanks to the grace and the persistent searching of the one who finds them. But the twist, the big surprise in the stories, is the joy of the finder. The shepherd doesn't lecture the sheep, if that would do any good. The woman doesn't call her friends together and share her regrets. Nobody gets grounded. There's just joy. Rejoice with me, for I have found what was lost. Jesus is making the case. This is what it's like with God. That for God, there's no mixture of emotions about lost people. For God, there is just rejoicing. Pure joy that they are found. The reason Jesus teaches this lesson about the joy of God is because it's a lesson that the scribes and the Pharisees needed to hear. You see, Jesus was welcoming sinners and eating with them. And the scribes and Pharisees thought that was too much. Were they wrong to think that? Well, they were just being honest, just being real life. Maybe it was a good thing that these sinners might have a change of heart, a change of life, work their way back to God and God's good favor. But if so, then we can't excuse their past behavior, they probably thought. We must maintain our stern outlook, tisk their bad choices. Tell them to approach God with humility, have mixed emotions. I mean, that's what I would feel if I were them. Wouldn't you? Isn't that what we sometimes do feel like when we are them? But then there's Jesus, welcoming sinners and eating with them, just sharing joy, telling stories about how when things lost are found, when people who are lost are found, God simply rejoices. If you think about it, and I do hope you really think about it, this is such wonderful, life-changing good news. Because let's admit it, we get ourselves lost from God all the time. All the time. Getting lost might mean lots of different things. There may be times when we just don't feel a closeness to God, even if we want to. Ever feel like that? There may be some times when we have a specific sin that we feel bad about. Maybe you felt that recently. Maybe you're thinking about that today. There may be times when we simply don't believe or don't even care about faith. That's natural. Our hearts and minds can wander. About any of these ways we find ourselves lost or far from God, we could feel shame or regret, fear or sorrow, a sense of dread. We could think, I don't want to go home. I don't want to face God, because if I'm going to approach God from where I am in my life right now, it's going to be awkward, embarrassing, painful. But look at what Jesus is saying. God doesn't feel any of those things about you. God rejoices. God goes out to find you, brings you home, and rejoices. When you are lost and found, God's feeling about you is joy. That's the good news Jesus was enacting that day, welcoming sinners and eating with them. Can you imagine that? Imagine when I had wandered home through the fields all those years ago. That set up there right in the middle of the dirt road, there'd been a table. A big old table that stretched wide in front of all the houses. And scurrying about were all the adults bringing out food and drinks. There's music playing and bright colors and excitement. There's my dad with hands outstretched. And my mom shouting, "Welcome back!" And all the neighbors with joy joining the party. Can you imagine? But you see, we don't have to imagine, because that's the way it is with God. That's what all this is. Jesus told us so. Jesus has made it so. Rejoice with me, says the finder, for you were lost, but now are found.